I was really excited to introduce you, and so I'm going to read your actual bio. We have one of our wonderful clients, Catherine Sanderson.
Here she is.
And she has a very fancy title, the Manuel Family Professor of Life Sciences at Amherst College. That's very fancy. And that's Amherst in the background.
It is Amherst. It's my office where I'm not, but that would be if I were there.
And in addition to being a professor, you also speak for public audiences, corporate audiences about the science of happiness and emotional intelligence. And you have a new book, Why We Act, Turning Bystanders into Moral Rebels, which I can't wait. I cannot wait to read it, actually. And then it's also published internationally as The Bystander Effect, which has a very different cover. But they're the same book. And we are excited to talk to you about this concept of happiness. Is there anything I should have mentioned when I said who you are?
No, that was super nice, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, that was a lovely intro.
Okay, and I just find what you research to be fascinating because it's all about the emotions and how our brains process it and react and all of that. I think that's really I think even more important right now. I know everything feels very heightened, like almost overwhelming in terms of like the emotional context. And I think a lot of people are having that problem maintaining any kind of baseline. It feels very ping-pongy, I guess. And so I was excited when you offered to give our audience some insights into, happiness and maintaining happiness amidst all this chaos. So what would you like to share?
Well, so I want to say two things. And one was that I wrote another book a couple years ago, which I'll show to illustrate the real difference in terms of topic, et cetera. So I wrote a book a few years ago called The Positive Shift, which examines the link between happiness and health and longevity. And I haven't been talking so much about that book of late because I have this new book out. But after the pandemic, I kept getting emails from people, and I got a couple of like handwritten letters in the mail. And they were who said, "Hey, I read your book a year ago, but it's been so helpful to me, and I've come back to it during this pandemic, and thank you so much. And it's been such a good mantra." And then myself, I've been freaking out. So then I was like, "Oh yeah, I should kind of go back and read that book, right? Like, what did that book say? That sounds helpful." And so I've been thinking about that. And then actually, Sarah, you sent a blog, one of your Friday emails, maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, and it was about giving.
Right.
And it was about, do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So it was about giving and how giving is so important. And this is such a good time, and how you've done these posts and you were making this content for free. And I was like, right, giving is helpful, and here's an example, and what could I give? And then I emailed you both, and I said, hey, you know what? I could give this. I could give your clients, your readers, et cetera, some tools from the field of psychology. And so it was actually this like really nice combination. Is I'd been thinking about what I wrote in this book a couple years ago. You then prompted me with this email, and then I reached out, and we've been trying to find a time that
and it's interesting because I don't know about you, Kath, but I found when we put that together, I felt so much more in control of being able to do something that I had, like, I know I had this knowledge that would be helpful to other people. And even if it was a really small thing, that made me feel much less disempowered, I guess, than I would, because I was feeling very, like, I can't do anything. Nothing I do matters. This is a global pandemic. But, maybe a little something can matter and have an impact.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I find, on very physically for me, I felt calm after doing it.
Yeah.
It was a weird thing. Like, I just, even though my life can be kind of,
I had this very busy kind of monkey mind thing happening around all that. And when we decided to put that together, it was like, okay, I can take this action. Mm-hmm. So it was really interesting how that worked.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a perfect example from the field of psychology about how many of us, the things that have been giving us purpose are gone. So I used to have this volunteer work. I can't do it. I used to have these colleagues that I sat with. I used to have my yoga class or my, group of friends that I had cocktails with or whatever, and it's gone. And so what I really resonated with in reading that piece you did was we need to find that purpose. And I think you're both speaking to how when you did it, you felt like, okay, I've done something. I've given people something. And I saved that. Like I put that aside and I was like, yes, I need to think about that. What are some ways I can update my blog? Can I do a post? Can I do whatever? And to me, that's the kind of thing that the research in psychology would say, there's so much that we can't control. When am I going to be able to get on a plane? When are my kids going to go back to school? When am I going to be able to do my normal life? And so what can I control? And what you all were doing was really giving people tools of saying, here's what we can own. Here are things that I can actively work on right now and use this time to clean up my website, to, do new search engines, to create some new content, whether that's video or blog post or whatever. And so to me, that was just super helpful as one of your clients, that you were giving to people something that would give them purpose and structure in their lives right now, which I think a lot of us are just craving.
I think it's very hard because I needed dog food yesterday. And I actually really enjoy, every few weeks when I need dog stuff, I take one of the dogs. It's like, who gets to go today? And I take one of the dogs and we go to the dog store and we get our dog food and she gets treats. And I've been going there for 14 years, the same place every few weeks. And I know these people and I was really sad that I couldn't just do that, that I had to do my online order and they're going to deliver it and it's this, and that's fine, it's great that they're doing that, but it was like this sort of profound almost loss over this little tiny bit of normal thing. And it was again reminding me how this is very much almost it's almost like a grieving process of all that normal stuff that we usually do. Is that traumatic over talking about dog food?
But I think that's an example of the kinds of things that we take for granted, right? And I'm teaching a class right now on sports psychology. I mean, I'm used to be teaching it live, now I'm teaching it online. But and the class used to meet at 8:30 a.m. on Tuesday mornings. And I had one of the students in that class email me and say, I just miss getting up and, coming and sitting in the class. And of course, none of them at the time were excited, 8:30 a.m. for
8:30, no one wants that morning class.
No one wants it. No. And they would roll in with deadhead and sweatpants and coffee mugs. And they were like, I just miss our class. I just miss, sitting there. And it's an example of the kinds of things going to take your dog to get some food. Boy, who would have thought that's the kind of thing that we...
Yeah, it's like a goofy errand. Right? It's one of those things you've got to do. But it's oh, wait, no, that actually was something that...
You look forward to.
It was part of my routine. And, your routine is important.
Well, and
is that an important thing, back to the idea of happiness, is it important to recognize that and allow yourself to grieve? Will that actually help, or...
Yeah, because I think part of it is that we need to understand right now, I use the word self-compassion. That we need to sort of treat ourselves listen, this is a loss. It's a loss that you can't take your dog and go and do that. It's a loss that you can't put your kids on the school bus. It's a loss that you can't go to the grocery store without a mask and a big hand washing, ritual, etc. Things that we used to take for granted. I have a cousin and we alternate our different families, hosting Thanksgiving each year. And so it's their turn. So she sent an email around last week okay, so planning ahead for Thanksgiving and we got a new baby and that'll be exciting. And, just wanted you to know, we're excited. And I wrote back and was like, gosh, I really hope that we get to go. I really, hope that, and again, that's, 8 months from now or whatever, but the idea of this normality. And I think that's the kind of thing that we all need to treat ourselves with compassion and understand that this is a loss and that some people are missing big things, whether it's, graduation or the prom or, whatever for students. But many of us are really missing the sort of small normalities of daily life. My husband and his dad and his brother have had a tradition to go to a a baseball game every spring, a professional baseball game, and they had tickets to a game in Florida. Of course, that's not happening. There is no Major League Baseball. They're not even watching it on TV. I mean, like, it's not happening.
Yeah, there's like literally no baseball. We're having that same problem in our house.
No, right. No baseball to watch, like live or, whatever. And I think, it's important for us to recognize that those are a loss and we miss those. And I think that it's important to treat ourselves with compassion and understand that it is a loss. It is a sense of real absence of the things that structured our lives and gave us routines and that we look forward to, big and small.
Yeah.
So beyond acknowledging that, what else can we do?
Mm-hmm. So there's
solve the problems, Catherine.
Right. So I got three things. One, I think it's really, really important that we all focus on staying well and practicing wellness. And that includes physical wellness. So getting some kind of exercise. For some people, you live in a place where that can be outside exercise. I know for other people, it's cold and it's snowing. But my husband and I have been doing something called the 6-minute workout. If you Google 6-minute workout, it's like a New York Times article from a few years ago, but it's literally 12 exercises. You do them for 30 seconds each. And they're things like sit-ups and push-ups and lunges. You need no equipment, no jump rope, nothing. It could be walking outside. It could be yoga. It could be meditation. But I think it's really important that we all stay physically healthy and psychologically healthy, because the reality is eventually we're going to go back into that world and we need to be able to fight off if we get infected, right? We need to be able to stay strong for the future. So I think one is practice wellness. I think two is actually something that we've already talked about, giving. Lots of research shows that giving is good for us at a physical level, at a psychological level, at a neurological level. That could be giving like you're trying to do with your blog post, like we're trying to do in this talk, but it could be donating, food to a local hospital or a food bank, because a lot of people are really in dire need right now. I have been really focused on the amount of good that people are doing for hospital workers. My son is dating a woman whose mother is a nurse. And my husband and I sent them a gift bag of like food from a local store. I think supporting independent stores. My daughter is a ballet dancer. There's the reality of my dogs.
I thought that was for Sarah's dogs.
I know. I was like, wait, those aren't mine.
No, those are mine, but maybe Christina's not yours. There's the reality.
I was like, it's always my dogs doing that.
I got
like mail truck. I don't know. Can't mute me because I'm talking. So, so we bought like a gift certificate for the local dance store that she goes to, because again, they can't sell stuff now. I've been really a big fan of supporting independent bookstores, whenever people can. So I think two is giving and figuring out ways. In some communities, it's actually giving blood. I mean, some communities are really going to be experiencing a shortage. And then three, and this is also something we're doing right now, is creating connections. How can we build connections with other people? And that could be checking in on our neighbors. I've been like texting, friends from college who I don't get to see. I had a Zoom lunch today with two friends who are each having lunch in other places. But being able to form connections. I actually email all of my college student advisees once a week. And I just say, I'm thinking about you. And then I send them something. I might send them this webinar. I've sent them like a blog post I've written. I've sent them, like a video I did. Sometimes I send them pictures of my dogs, but trying to maintain connections in some way, because that's such an important part of who we are, is connecting with friends and family and colleagues and so on. And so finding ways to do that. So those are three things: foster wellness, physical and psychological, give to other people, create connections.
Okay.
The connections thing is so funny because, not funny, haha, but like funny. It's amazing what people see as like a connection too. Like I was on my personal Instagram, which is super cool.
Daily Mollies. I love them.
I accidentally started a thing where I was posting mostly a dog trick, but sometimes other things that I was doing with my dog, with my young dog. And someone actually messaged me and said, the first thing I do every morning is pull up Instagram and go to your account so I can see what Mally is doing. And I was like, and this was a few weeks ago, like right when all this started, she's like, it just makes my day. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm doing this every day now.
The pressure.
But it was just such a funny thing because then I've gotten other messages too. And like, I'm not like a big Instagrammer. But I just got like, it meant something to people that they could sort of visit this funny dog in Portland who likes to do silly tricks.
But you see, that's what I mean, is it's like, that's the kind of thing then that somebody's really going to look forward to. My brother and his wife and my husband like have been sending each other like funny cartoons or, whatever related to COVID-19. But again, it's something hysterical. The other night, they FaceTimed us and both my husband and my brother have cut their own hair. Oh. And so they were like, look how I did on the sides and look how I did the back. And, so I'm not going to be, I am really trying not to cut my own hair, but that's an example of just, again, anything that we're doing. And sometimes it's deliberate. Like I now have like a list on my calendar in which like every day I make a point of texting a different friend. And that's such a good, example of something to just keep in mind so that we're reaching out to other people. And it has to be more deliberate now because you're not going to run into somebody in the supermarket or your office or your kid's school drop off. And so trying to do deliberate ways in which we can build connections is a really important part.
What about structure? Is that important or
yeah,
not?
No, absolutely. Because one of the challenges is like, everybody's like, who's had the experience of getting up one morning and being like, what day is today? Is today Tuesday? Is today Wednesday? Right? I mean, and part of it is
I had a huge freak out yesterday. Yeah. I had no idea it was Tuesday.
Well, and you wouldn't, because every day is exactly the same, right?
And I work from home normally.
Yeah,
so,
right.
And I'm usually pretty on it with what day it is. And I really was halfway through the day and I was just like, I really had this, and it was very disarming.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key part of routine, right? Of saying, okay, what is my day? And like my husband makes fun of me because he'll be like, why do you want to know every day what we're doing for dinner? And I'm like, because that's part of the structure. Like, when are we going to do our 6-minute workout? What are we making for dinner? What calls do I have or meetings or what are my goals? And I think part of it is trying to create some sense of structure because the normal things that would guide us, get the kids on the bus, drop my daughter off at ballet, pick up the whatever, the dry cleaning, none of that's happening. And so I think to the extent that we can have structure, it's actually a really important part of trying to keep a semblance of our normal life, right? A semblance of our normal life in terms of what we're doing. And many of the things that we have regularly done, they're just gone. And so being able to create that structure is a really important part of psychological well-being.
That seems different though than that kind of, I would call it the productivity cult that people kind of get, because I've seen a lot of people feeling like they're losers or failing because they're not using this time to launch a new business or write a book or create 800 works of art. And I'm not making fun of people. It's just like, I think there are a lot of folks who've been reading a lot of messages like, you have downtime now, like use it.
Yeah.
And that seems like that's like the structure is the thing that's like, and if like you're not able to, write that book during this time, that's fine. Like trying to put that kind of pressure on yourself is going to make it worse.
Yeah.
But if you create some consistency in whatever that amount of productivity you have, I mean, I'm not the psychology expert. But this is just kind of what Well,
yeah, because that's the kind of like beat yourself up thing. And there were a bunch of things that went around on Twitter, like lots of people will suddenly realize that the only thing separating them from writing the great American novel was not having enough time, right? That there are things
awful.
Right?
That's horrible.
Right? But that's the challenge of people who are like, I should be using this. Then that gets into the beating yourself up. So I think the structure and the routine is sort of saying, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a load of laundry. I am going to respond to these emails. And the goals can be very modest. I'm trying to write a letter every Sunday, a physical letter, to express gratitude towards someone. So that's not a novel. That's not a symphony. That's not a new book. It's a very simple, I'm going to write a physical letter, put a stamp on it, put it in the mail. And so I think giving us a sense of structure and routine can be as simple as I'm going to do a load of laundry. I'm going to spend 10 minutes meditating. I'm going to, make a sauce that I'm going to use later that night for dinner. It can be modest. It can be minor. And that's still a way of giving us a sense so that today I have done something. And that's an important piece of sort of pretending that this is my normal life, right? That this is actually what we're doing. And I think that's the distinction between initially, I think many of us were like, well, it's kind of like a snow day. It's like, a couple of days in which we'll, stay in our pajamas all day. But now it's weeks and it's months. And the reality is it may kind of circle back also. Like we may have our normal life and then we may go back. And so having some sense of here is our structure, here is our routine is a way of staying psychologically healthy.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what we got to do then, Sarah.
I know. I'm like,
I think that one's true.
No, I just know so many people who have really I feel like they've been really demoralized by a lot of those, like that, whoever posted that on Twitter, is like, and it's like, you don't have to, I think some of us are comforted by being like, okay, like if I stay busy and I create things, especially those of us who are in creative fields, then that can be very, that also can be kind of like having some control, having, managing the chaos, because it's like I can see that I have, I don't know, output something. But I had so many conversations with people who are like, I'm not using this time well. And it's like, it's fine. To me, like I'm not an expert, but it feels to me like that's fine.
Well, and again, I'm going to reframe what's not using this time well. What's not using this time well is totally subjective. You might be using this time well to say, I'm going to spend a lot of time with my dogs. I'm going to make sure that I get enough sleep. Right. I mean, so that's I think it's important to frame it that might very well be doing very good with this time, right? Yeah. Treating ourselves well, treating ourselves with compassion. That's actually using this time very well. Yeah. So that is using this time well.
Yeah, I'm using this time because I was hoping to do some, to compete with my dog in some very cool competitions. This late spring, early summer was kind of my schedule for that. And obviously all those things are canceled. And if they weren't, I still wouldn't go. And so I'm like, oh, what can I do? And, to kind of, because I was very sad. I was really, really sad when I realized that kind of hit me. Again, I'm very cool. And but I'm doing virtual classes with our dog trainer, and we're learning really complicated tricks. Like we're learning backwards leg weaves, which looks really cool when you do it. And it's very hard, and it's going to take a lot of time to do that, but it's like a really nice, like kind of compensating for that thing I've lost. To kind of be able to, and it's silly, like it's not important. It's not writing that great American novel. But it's something that's kind of bringing me some, I don't know.
You're using your time well.
Well, and it's making up for that thing I was sad about too, because it's like, oh, I'm going to be so proud because we're getting there with this trick. It's going to be cool. But I think that's okay to, like, things like that seem like they have, I don't know, I can get all into toxic American culture where like doing things that are, that are bringing us joy that aren't productive, quote unquote, is actually a good thing. But that's a whole other topic for another day. Is there anything else we should know, Catherine?
I think it's really important that we treat ourselves kindly. I think it's really important that we treat others around us kindly. You might be coping well, but you may have friends or family that are really struggling. And so I think reaching out to people is just really important. And I think that different people are handling this whole situation in different ways. And it's okay to acknowledge that it's hard. It's okay to acknowledge that this is really a difficult time, and that's okay. So I think it's not going to be forever. But while we're living it, I think doing everything we can to treat ourselves and those we care about with kindness and compassion is really important.
Yeah. I like that.
I know, I do too. I think that's a really good concluding note, actually.
Well, thank you both for the opportunity to talk, and stay safe, both of you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for meeting with us.
I know.
Enjoy your dogs.
Take care.
Bye-bye.